Nobody noticed Eli. He didn't talk, didn't raise his hand. But on the day of the final exam, he handed in something no one expected. And what his teacher read made her stop everything, walk out of the room, and call the police. Eli Parker was the kind of student teachers remembered for being forgettable, quiet, pale, always alone. Sat in the back, wore the same hoodie every day, never late, never in trouble, never really there. He didn't speak unless called on, and even then it was one-word answers. The other students had a nickname for him, Static. Not because of his energy, but because he was always just background noise. Some thought he was just shy. Others said he was weird, but nobody asked. Nobody knew that Eli lived in a shelter with his mother, that they'd moved 3 times that year alone. That dinner most nights came from a vending machine at a bus station. And Eli didn't complain, he just faded in and faded out. Miss Carter was a seasoned English teacher, 18 years, 5 principals, and hundreds of students. She'd seen it all. But Eli confused her. He never caused problems, but never showed signs of progress either. His essays were empty. His quizzes barely passed. It was like he didn't care. On the last day of school, she handed out the final writing prompt. Tell me the story only you can tell. She expected the usual summer plans, family vacations, sports games. Eli didn't start writing right away. He sat still for nearly 30 minutes. Then, with sudden purpose, he picked up his pen and wrote for the next hour straight. That night, Miss Carter stayed late grading exams. Eli's was the last in the stack. She almost skipped it. Expected more blank lines, maybe a few tired sentences. Instead, she found a story, not fiction, not drama, a confession. Eli wrote about the bruises he covered with long sleeves, about the shouting at home, the locked door, how he had to choose between walking to school or walking his mom to a clinic, how sometimes he went without food so she could have painkillers. But then came the line that made her stop cold. This will probably be the last paper I ever write, because I don't think I'll be alive much longer. Her breath caught. She stood up, walked out of the classroom, and called 911. The school resource officer and a social worker arrived within the hour. They found Eli still sitting outside the library, headphones in, silent as ever. He didn't resist, didn't run. He just looked up at them and said, "You read it?" His mother was found later that night, unconscious but alive. Overdosed, not on drugs, but expired insulin. The apartment was nearly empty. A mattress on the floor, mold on the walls. The kitchen had a can of green beans and half a jug of expired milk. They weren't criminals, they weren't lazy, they were just lost, forgotten by a system that moved too fast and noticed too little. Eli spent the summer in foster care. Not the kind you hear horror stories about. This time he got lucky. A retired librarian and her husband took him in, bought him clothes that fit, cooked real food. They read his essay, framed it on the fridge, and every night at dinner they asked him a new question. Because for the first time in his life, someone actually wanted to know. Miss Carter kept in touch. She visited once a week, and when school resumed in the fall, she brought in a new writing prompt. Tell me the story someone else needs to hear. And this time, Eli raised his hand first. Today, Eli is 28, a teacher, teaches high school English in the same district where he once sat in the back unnoticed. His first lesson each year is always the same. He hands out a blank sheet of paper and says, "Tell me the story only you can tell." Because the quiet kid in the back row might be carrying more than you'll ever know. And sometimes a final exam isn't about grades, it's about being heard. If this story gave you goosebumps, share it. Someone out there might need to be seen.